There is a room beneath Grand Central Terminal that does not appear on any blueprint. Its location is not listed on any public map of the building. It is accessed by a single elevator and a staircase carved directly out of bedrock, inconspicuously placed behind a door in a public corridor that 10 million people walk past every year without knowing it exists. During the Second World War, armed guards stood at that door with orders to shoot on sight anyone who entered without clearance. Anyone carrying a bucket of sand was to be killed immediately, not detained, not questioned, killed. The room is called M42, and it is the most important space in New York City that you will never be allowed to visit. It sits 10 stories below street level, blasted out of the solid Manhattan schist that forms the bedrock of the island, directly beneath the feet of every commuter who has ever walked through Grand Central Terminal's main concourse. 22,000 square feet, a cavern carved into the spine of the city. And inside it, when it was built, 9 rotary converters stood 20 feet tall and weighed 15 tons each, converting 11,000 volts of alternating current into the direct current that powered the electrified third rail of every train moving in and out of the terminal. Every train, every day, for decades. This room powered 80% of the troop and equipment movements on the northeastern seaboard during World War II. This room was the beating heart of the rail system that moved the American military to the ports where it shipped out to fight in Europe and the Pacific. And this room was so secret that its existence was known to fewer people than the Manhattan Project. The deeper I went into what's beneath Grand Central Terminal, the more I realized that M42 isn't the secret. M42 is the door. And behind it is a story about what the Vanderbilts actually built under New York, how much of it has never been publicly documented, and why the most powerful family of the Gilded Age constructed a hidden empire beneath the surface of a city that still doesn't fully understand what's under its feet. Start with what the Vanderbilts actually did, because the official history tells you they built a train station. The truth is, they built a city. In 1899, Cornelius Vanderbilt's New York Central Railroad controlled the most valuable piece of real estate in Manhattan, the rail yards that stretched from 42nd Street to 56th Street along Park Avenue. The original Grand Central Depot, built in 1871, had already been expanded into Grand Central Station by 1900, but the Vanderbilts and their chief engineer, a man named William J. Wilgus, had a vision that went far beyond a train station. Wilgus proposed something that had never been attempted. He would take the open rail yards, sink them underground, electrify the tracks, cover the entire surface with streets and building lots, and sell the air rights above the buried tracks to developers who would construct an entirely new neighborhood on top of the infrastructure. The trains would run beneath the city. The city would be built on top of the trains. The surface and the underground would become 2 separate worlds, one visible, one hidden, stacked on top of each other, sharing the same coordinates, but operating in different dimensions. The plan was approved. Construction began in 1903, and what they built over the next decade is staggering in its scale and almost entirely invisible to the people who use it every day. Grand Central Terminal, the building you see, opened on February 2, 1913. 46 tracks on 2 levels. The upper level for long-distance trains, the lower level for commuter trains. But beneath both levels, beneath the tracks, beneath the platforms, beneath the sub-basements that house the mechanical systems, they carved M42 out of the bedrock, a power station buried 10 stories underground, a chamber so deep and so well hidden that its precise location was deliberately omitted from the building's own architectural plans. This raises a simple but critical question. Why would you hide a power station from your own blueprints? The official answer is security. And certainly, by the time World War II arrived, the security rationale was real. But M42 was built in 1913. The decision to omit it from public plans was made decades before any wartime threat. The secrecy was original. It was built into the design. The Vanderbilts didn't just build a room underground. They built a room that wasn't supposed to exist, as if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now go deeper. Because M42 is only the most famous of Grand Central's hidden spaces. It is not the only one, and it may not be the most significant. Beneath the terminal, a network of tunnels, passageways, sealed corridors, and abandoned platforms extends in every direction. Some of these spaces are documented, many are not. The known network includes tunnels connecting the terminal to the Waldorf Astoria, to the Roosevelt Hotel, to the Commodore Hotel, to the Gray Bar Building, to the Manhattan Savings Bank Building, to the Channon Building. A subterranean web that connected every major building in the Vanderbilt real estate empire without ever surfacing to street level. A system that allowed people and materials and power and information to move through the neighborhood invisibly, beneath the feet of a city that had no idea the passages existed. And then there is Track 61. Track 61 is a platform and siding located beneath the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, accessible from the terminal's lower levels. It was not built for public use. It was built for private rail cars. The wealthy and the powerful could arrive in New York in their own train cars, be routed directly to Track 61, step out onto the private platform, and take a dedicated elevator directly into the Waldorf Astoria's basement without ever being seen by the public. Without stepping outside. Without passing through a single space where an ordinary person might encounter them. The first documented use of Track 61 was by General John J. Pershing in 1938, who had recently suffered a heart attack and was brought through the passage to avoid exertion. But the platform's most famous association is with President Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR, who had contracted polio at age 39 and used a wheelchair, employed Track 61 to enter and exit New York City without the public seeing his disability. The full details of his use remain debated, but on at least one documented occasion, October 21, 1944, Secret Service records confirm that Roosevelt departed the Waldorf via the private elevator to the underground siding and boarded his rail car beneath the hotel. The silence was deafening. Because here's what Track 61 actually represents. Not just a convenience, not just a security measure, a parallel infrastructure, a system built specifically so that the people who controlled the city could move through it without being part of it. The trains above carried the public. The tunnels below carried the powerful. The same building, the same ground. Two completely different experiences of the same space, separated by 10 stories of bedrock and a security clearance. Now look at the larger pattern, because Grand Central's underground didn't exist in isolation. It was the core of something the Vanderbilts called Terminal City. Terminal City was the name given to the complex of buildings constructed on the air rights above the buried tracks. Between 1913 and 1931, the Vanderbilt enterprise developed an entire neighborhood above its underground infrastructure. The Waldorf Astoria, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Commodore Hotel, the Gray Bar Building, the New York Central Building. Dozens of office towers and hotels, all connected to each other and to the terminal by underground passageways that allowed the Vanderbilt empire to function as a single, integrated system. Above ground, they were separate buildings on separate blocks. Below ground, they were one organism, one circulatory system, one network of tunnels and passages and power lines and private platforms, all running through the bedrock beneath Midtown Manhattan, all controlled by the same family that had sunk the tracks underground in the first place. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Because what the Vanderbilts built under New York isn't just an engineering marvel, it's a model of power. The visible city operates on the surface. The public walks the streets, rides the trains, enters the buildings through the front door. But beneath all of it, invisible, unrecorded on public plans, accessible only through doors that most people will never notice. There is another system, a system that moves differently, that connects differently, that is governed by different rules and accessible to different people. The evidence suggests something much larger than a transit system. Now let's talk about why you can't visit. Because the inaccessibility of Grand Central's underground is not accidental. It is maintained with a consistency that suggests policy, not neglect. M42 has never been open to the public. The former Metro North docent Danny Brucker, who led private tours of some of the terminal's hidden spaces for years, would describe the shoot-on-sight orders of the wartime era, and note that even today, the sub-basement is well guarded. When CNN ran a feature on the space in 2015, the reporter noted that M42's precise location is not listed on any blueprints, and that access requires passing through an inconspicuous door that gives no indication of what lies behind it. Track 61, similarly, is closed to the public. The tunnels connecting the terminal to surrounding buildings are mostly sealed, boarded up, or repurposed in ways that obscure their original function. The passageway to the Roosevelt Hotel is blocked by a makeshift wooden door marked "Do Not Enter." The Saucony Mobile Tunnel was closed for over 3 decades before reopening as part of a transit renovation in conjunction with the construction of One Vanderbilt. I want to pause here and ask something that isn't usually asked. What is the full extent of the underground network beneath Grand Central Terminal? Because no one can answer that question. Not completely. Not publicly. The tunnels that are known are the ones that have been documented by urban explorers, by journalists who were given limited access, by historians who have pieced together fragments from construction records and real estate filings. But the Vanderbilt enterprise, built beneath Midtown Manhattan for over 3 decades, from 1903 to the mid-1930s, connecting dozens of buildings through a subterranean network that was never designed for public access and never comprehensively mapped in any document available to the public. The deeper I went into the construction records, the more I found references to spaces that don't appear on modern plans. Passages described in early 20th century engineering documents that have no corresponding entry in current building records. Connections between buildings that were noted at the time of construction and then never mentioned again. Sealed doors, bricked-up tunnels, stairways that descend to levels that no public diagram acknowledges. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every domain I've studied. Sealed passages beneath churches, locked floors in cathedrals, tunnels beneath the White House that have never been publicly mapped. And now, beneath Midtown Manhattan, an underground network built by the wealthiest family of the Gilded Age, connecting the most powerful buildings in the most powerful city in the world, accessible through doors that most people walk past every day without seeing. Here's what I keep returning to. The Vanderbilts didn't just build a train station. They built a second city beneath the first one, a city of tunnels and platforms and power stations and private passages, designed from the beginning to be invisible to the public that walked above it. A city where presidents could arrive unseen, where power could move without witness, where the infrastructure that kept everything running was buried so deep in bedrock that its location was omitted from its own blueprints. And that second city is still there, still functioning, still guarded, still closed. I don't have a complete theory. I have a question that multiplies the deeper I look. Why was M42 omitted from the building's blueprints decades before any wartime threat justified the secrecy? What is the full extent of the tunnel network connecting Grand Central to the surrounding buildings? How many passages were built during the 3 decades of terminal city construction that have never been publicly documented? What lies behind the sealed doors and bricked-up corridors that urban explorers have photographed but never penetrated? And why, over a century after construction, does the most visited building in New York City sit on top of spaces that no member of the public has ever been permitted to see? I'll leave you with this. Tomorrow morning, or any morning, walk into Grand Central Terminal. Stand in the main concourse. Look up at the ceiling painted with constellations. Feel the marble under your feet. Listen to the murmur of 10 million stories crossing through the space. Now look down. Beneath the marble, beneath the platforms, beneath the tracks, beneath the sub-basements and the mechanical rooms and the levels that the building acknowledges. 10 stories down, carved into the bedrock of Manhattan, there is a room that powered the movement of an army, a room that was guarded with lethal force, a room that does not appear on any plan. And that room is only the beginning, because beneath it, around it, extending in every direction through tunnels that connect to buildings you've walked past 1,000 times, there is a network, a second city, built by the Vanderbilts, hidden by design, maintained in secrecy for over a century. You walk above it every day. You have never been inside it, and nobody who controls it has ever explained why you're not allowed.